We are April and Scott, creators of NaughtyGym.com, and this is The Naughty Gym Show.
For years, we've been fitness and nutrition coaches to thousands of people through our commercial gyms and online platform. We've also spent nearly a decade in an ever-evolving open relationship.
This show brings together two of our biggest passions, fitness and sex positivity. Our mission is to maximize the physical and mental health of anyone brave enough to explore relationship structures that run counter to societal norms.
We have demolished our old ways of thinking about relationships, and from that rubble, built a life full of happiness, adventure, and vitality. And now we want to help you do the same.
So hop on the treadmill, start the show, and let us teach you how to never stop playing.
We're so glad you guys have decided to join us today to hear this incredible story of a local drag queen from our hometown who we are good friends with, and whose unbelievable story inspired an upcoming documentary and was the subject of national attention a couple of years ago about drag queen story time for kids. Please listen in. Even though the audio isn't great, you shouldn't have any trouble hearing what's happening.
Welcome back to the Naughty Gym Show. I am your host, April. My lovely co-host, Scott, is here with me. I don't know why you get to be the co-host.
And why am I lovely?
We have an extra special guest with us today, Miss Majesty Divine. And we are every week for Pride Month highlighting a story that affects the LGBTQ community. And this is a story that is from our local area. But this is also a person that is very special to us personally. And so welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about an incredible story today. It's going to include a massive amount of drama, hate,
Politics,
the FBI, a documentary, all sorts of stuff. And we'll get to that.
But also love and kindness and hopefully healing and hopefully paving a way for other people to have more rights and to be just be able to show up as themselves. And it's really a horribly beautiful story.
Heavy on the horrible.
There was a lot of horrible. It was not fun.
All right. So we'll start this way. I met you long after April had met you.
Yeah.
For the first time at a drag bingo charity fundraiser. I think it was a charity.
At the Decatur Country Club here in Decatur, Alabama.
Yeah.
That's where you first met.
I think that was the first time I'd ever seen you.
Yeah.
And April knew you long before that. And why is that?
I know you because you were my son's 7th grade math teacher.
Yes.
And you made such an impact in his life. He hated school and hated math. And that was one of his favorite classes because of you.
Because when I was in 7th grade, I hated school. I hated math and I hated. So when I became a teacher, somebody told me once, you will become, if you do your job correctly, you will become the teacher you needed.
Yeah. And
I think I became the teacher that I needed years ago. But I remember 7th grade and stuff in particular where everybody was worried about grades. And I had to, when I started teaching, I had to take away the myth that a kid's character is linked to their grade point average.
Yeah.
Because you have great kids who are G students and you have awful kids who are 4.
Yeah, I had terrible grades, and look how awesome I am.
you had amazing grades, first of all.
I did
but
not.
My son was one of those kids that very smart, hated school, made horrible grades because he just didn't like it. But to be able to be a bright spot in a kid's life and see them as humans instead of just a grade is a gift that you gave to children.
Let's start this question.
Okay, go ahead.
Because you're now I guess in a sense full-time a drag queen. I mean, no. You still have
I still have side hustles that I do, but I do a lot more drag than I did when I was two very different people so I had my professional life teaching and I had my professional life drag, and they never crossed over. Like there was 22 years that they never crossed over.
Well, yeah, we're going to get to that because that's an important element. It's something we can relate to in a way. But tell us first, and I assume it's okay to say this but I'm a Southern redneck person raised here in Alabama. So if I say anything that's politically incorrect, I'm sure you'll let me know. But Your birth name is James Miller.
Yes.
Tell us who is James Miller, and then tell us who is Majesty Divine.
So James Miller is the person sitting in front of you right now. Okay. That was my professional life. One of the things people don't get about drag is I am not a trans person. I am a drag queen. It is a profession. It is a character I created in a form of high theater. So James Miller was a profession. I was a teacher. I am still a teacher, a husband, father to stepson, grandfather. That's who that is. Majesty Divine is a character I created to entertain people. And originally I created her to raise money for government programs that had been cut. In Alabama in the 90s, the governor cut HIV medication funding. So there was this gap of funding, and we had to find a way to raise money as a community. So drag shows were really easy, and they were entertaining, and they were fun. And I also wrote for the gay newspaper that Alabama had for about 20 years.
Alabama had a gay newspaper?
We had 4 gay newspapers.
Wow. Yeah. And
the Alabama Forum being the longest running one that was distributed from Mobile. And it came out once a month. Like the gay news before the internet was once a month. So you had to get it all in there at one time.
I want to say real quick though, I think one of the most common misconceptions about drag queens is that they're trans.
Yes.
That you want to be a woman. There
is overlap. There are trans women who are drag queens and vice versa. But for the most part, drag is a profession. It's a job.
Right. Well, and I know this may be somewhat difficult to answer universally, but what is your best guess at the percentage of people who are drag queens that are also trans?
That's hard. That really is hard to pin down because population wise, I think it's like not even 1% of people are trans.
You mean in the general population?
In the general population. Yeah. So, but because of the discrimination with trans people in jobs and housing and stuff, drag and in gay safe spaces seems to be a place where people who are trans can come and work and live. But like I couldn't pin it down to a number, but I know I've always worked with trans entertainers and cisgendered entertainers.
Here locally in North Alabama, of the drag queens that you work with, because we go to these shows all the time, mm-hmm. and we see a lot of the same people. Of those people, is it half, 10%, 90%?
I would probably say about 5%.
Okay. So even in the drag community, at least here, it's still a low percentage.
Yes. I mean, okay. They're there, but not every trans person is an entertainer.
Right.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. Drag is an art.
Yeah.
Right. It's not an identity. It's not like a gender identity.
Yeah.
That's I think the misconception is that drag, they want to be a female, and that's not. And it's a performance. It's an art.
Once that makeup and stuff comes off, I'm right back to who I am. My husband would argue it with that sometimes the drag queen comes through, even when I'm not in drag, because Majesty Divine gave me a voice I did not have.
Yeah.
Like, you would be surprised how easy it is for me in drag to control an audience, to entertain, to snap my fingers and get things done in drag.
Yeah.
That just as James Miller, the math teacher, didn't have those same powers. Yeah. But sometimes every once in a while, you don't even need the makeup. It comes through in the voice, the hip pops out, and I'm ready to go.
I love that though. It's an alter ego that's giving you a voice.
Oh yeah.
So let's start from the beginning here. And you've been doing drag. This is not like you just started drag 5 years ago and no. Chaos ensued. You've been doing this a long time. What got you started and how long ago was that?
So 1996, I moved from Valhermosa Springs, Alabama to Birmingham, Alabama. I had already been teaching a few years. I had started working because I didn't know anybody in Birmingham. I didn't know any gay people. So I had started working with Pride. And when I started working with Pride, I started working with the newspaper. Well, they wanted me to write because I was a teacher and I'm an okay writer, but I can tell a story. And they wanted me to write, but I was very concerned in 1996 in Alabama about putting my name in there, my boy name. And my sister-in-law had given me the nickname Miss Majesty, because I'm a bossy bitch. Divine came later, but so I wrote under the name Miss Majesty. And so I wrote for the Alabama Forum, and I did community calendars. I interviewed politicians, and that's where it started. But then we were working for Pride, and we had an AIDS hospice in Birmingham where they cut the funding. So they needed funding, and somebody was like, well, why don't we do a drag show? I'm like, drag. And so we did like a turnabout drag show, which is where people who normally do not do drag get into, like, I could put you in drag and we could raise money.
That will be the most awful experience of everybody's life that sees it.
And now we're going to do it. But that kind of planted that little seed of, and nobody, everybody knew Miss Majesty. Like it's really sad, but most of the people in the gay community did not know I had a boy name for about 15 years. Somebody who'd known me from the very beginning assumed my name was Madge. So 2001, a whole lot of shitty things happened that year. I suffered the loss of a family member, and I started to kind of spiral and shut down. So Majesty Divine wasn't really like a fleshed out thing except on paper. And then a friend of mine was like, why don't we go because they were trying to get me out of the house, and they took me to a drag show, and I saw Charlie Brown, Mr. Charlie Brown, which, by the way, he did because you could still be arrested for intent to deceive in drag. Like, you could, for committing fraud, trying to pretend you were a woman, you could be arrested.
What? In the state of Alabama?
In Georgia. And Alabama had similar laws about clothing. But anyway, went to a drag show. She was hysterical. Like, this big, very body, 300-pound drag queen who cursed like a sailor. So, like, we were like that. But that was the first person I saw in drag, and I really enjoyed what I saw. But then Pride needed money again because, we didn't have that income. And so we did a Christmas show, and I actually put costumes together and actually put an act together, got out there. And then it was kind of like I really enjoyed being on stage, and I really liked hosting shows. So then I auditioned for something else, but that drag kind of got me out of that spiral of depression, and that, your default is to close down, is to shut down and withdraw. It got me back out there. Yeah. So it kind of gave me a voice.
And community, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And it put me out in the community. Yeah. It put me out, and I had friends, and it helped a lot. So that is where it started. And then it just evolved over time. When I wasn't performing in bars, I created my own act. Like, had a Tupperware party kind of thing, but it was for adult toys. And I was a sex educator, but I taught in drag. Like, I taught people about, their bodies and safety and things that are actually illegal in Alabama, because you're not allowed to teach an actual anything but abstinence curriculum.
Right.
But that was for adults. I was teaching.
When you say you're not allowed to, you mean in school you're not allowed to do anything else, or even in your own private business?
Oh, now in your own private business, that's up to you. But like,
okay,
for teaching in schools, you're allowed to teach abstinence only is what you're allowed to teach.
That's still the thing in Alabama?
I don't think the laws ever changed.
That's the standard.
But I also, I become very versed in teaching about HIV prevention. Yeah. So Miss Majesty Divine kind of gave that humor to a very heavy subject, and people paid attention. And so it evolved over time. And then I tried to open my own bar, and COVID kind of killed that. But we did I did a lot of things in drag to entertain people. And it was just really funny because it was easier to tell a story as a Southern woman in drag, like that character, that Southern female character. It was easier to tell jokes in that than it would be just me sitting here.
Yeah.
So, and I used that to my benefit. Like,
well, let's fast forward a bit.
And it was money. There was money involved too.
It was money, but you also were and still do a lot for charity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so eventually, there's been decades of being a drag performer.
Yeah.
At some point, somebody asked you, relatively recently, I'm assuming. I know the big incident we're about to start talking about happened a couple of years ago, but you eventually got asked to start doing some drag queen story time readings for children.
Yes.
Correct? How did that come up? And then that'll start to lead us into the big story.
Pride has kind of moved from the protesty to the party. And because LGBTQIA families want to see themselves out there. So they want their kids to see their community. So things have started to become family friendly, which I wasn't a big fan of it. I never did family friendly stuff. I always did my stuff at night or in bars. But a group of LGBTQIA families knew I was a teacher. They knew who I was. I have a very good reputation.
Just to interrupt, you started when did you get your first teaching job?
1992.
And that was in Alabama?
Yes.
Okay. And you taught in Alabama your entire teaching career?
30 years. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Keep going. Sorry.
But they asked me if I could help come up with something for their kids because they had gone to the library. They'd gone to the library story times. Lesbian moms were made to feel very unwelcome. And that the families that didn't match the heteronormative family were kind of shunned. And they wanted something for themselves. And they were like, do you know some books? I'm like, I don't know any, but I can find them. And I did. And so then somebody from one of the Pride organizations said, they told me you found these books. Would you mind reading them? Well, one, I dealt with teenagers teaching. I taught teenagers. I didn't teach little kids. But then another family came to me and said, would you please? We need something where our kids could see their family. Where
just representation.
Yeah, the representation. Yeah. There were libraries in bigger cities that were like, well, we have an LGBTQIA storybook time, and they would get drag queens to come read.
So that's where those parents likely got that idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
More than likely, because they had moved from a metropolitan area to even just the Huntsville has never been the hugest metroplex, but it was a bigger city. And they were like, would you mind? And so I put my objections aside and I sat and read stories one afternoon in drag. Everybody had a good time, and the parents were very grateful. I didn't charge them money, but they did raise money for, I don't remember what they were doing at that point, but it was fun. And I had a good time, and the kids loved it. And so during the parade in the next week, all the kids were screaming at the drag queens who were reading to them. They were so excited to see them out in the parade. And it evolved from there. I really enjoy reading to kids. I used to love reading to my nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
I have 5 brothers. I read to my 3 younger brothers all the way up until they were 8, 9 years old. And so it was just fun. It was something nostalgic. I enjoyed it. It wasn't very often, but I also had a lot of bibliotherapy books because my master's degree is counseling, and I had a lot of books that would help kids. So I had these books on autonomy and speaking up, and the biggest one, and this is one of the ones that kind of ruffled some feathers, is that secrets are not good things. And that if somebody's telling you to keep a secret and it's wrong or it doesn't feel right, then you need to tell a grown up.
Yeah.
And I had all these books that were counseling books that I was reading. I found a way to teach kids to advocate for themselves, for some autonomy.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents weren't even ready for that. They were like, we never thought about that, because there was one book where it talks about you don't have to hug everybody who wants to hug you.
Yes. And isn't that, when you look back now, you think, why, even as a parent of 3 children, I think, why did I force them to hug adults they didn't want to hug? And that's such an important thing to teach children, that
because we were taught that way.
Right. And then it's a secret, and then you feel shame, and then that just leads to bad things.
But then that book became a controversy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. The drag queen told kids they could say no to hugs. And that actually became kind of a weird controversy on its own.
I've never thought about that. I wonder if that is why, as we talk about consent constantly in the non-monogamous community, consent. Yet we were taught as kids, hug somebody if they ask for a hug.
Yeah.
We were taught that our consent didn't matter.
Right.
Yeah. And maybe that's partially why it is so difficult, and it feels so offensive to us to say no to any type of touch, or especially a hug, because that's innocent. But honestly, a lot of times I think when you feel the resistance to physical touch like that, there may be a reason for it. Evolutionarily, we're built to be able to sense danger and
not everybody makes you feel comfortable.
Right.
I mean, there are people that I have known forever that I do not hug. I don't side hug. I don't do that.
I don't know that you've hugged me, so maybe
don't even try that.
Children, when they're told that they have to hug adults because it's respectful or whatever, then are taught unknowingly to silence their voice, to not speak out if something's uncomfortable, to not trust their intuition. So
you started doing the story time readings, and I know you said it wasn't that often, but one of those experiences ignited a firestorm of controversy. Oh, God. And I actually watched it. I had seen it before. I watched it again today, and it seems like the bulk of the controversy was stirred up over one single offhanded comment.
But when you watched that video, did you see any kids present?
No.
Okay.
All I can see is you and what is another adult is all I can see in the video.
So when I did a fundraiser for a dog rescue and they became very good friends, they named me their official drag queen. We needed something to raise money, especially during the summer. A bunch of the parents were like, we need something for our kids to do. Do you mind doing this once a month and just come read some stories? So when I did Drag Queen Story Time for the dog rescue for Hard Knocks, we went live. I went live from the time I started to the time I ended and left.
Well, you're talking about social media live, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay. There was never a point where what I was doing was not 100% live and online. And you got to remember, I did multiple fundraisers for them, and it became something that was fun. The kids loved it. So those were during the day, during the summer. Well, we had to do one at night. And so about 8:00, we had a Drag Queen Story Time planned. But our audience was at home in bed, and we were still doing a fundraiser. So we went live because every time we go live, we would get donations from around the country. So there weren't kids in the building.
Oh, so there were no kids?
There were no kids.
Because you can't, like the news places that posted that, or TikTok or whoever it was that originated that video, it shows you, some female adult standing next to you. Mm-hmm. And the assumption is, based off the article that video is embedded in the middle of, is that you were reading that story to a room full of children. And I didn't know that until just now.
So what they did, so that video was provided by our protestors, who will remain nameless because I'm not giving them anymore. They would send people in to record what we were doing.
Well, I will say something about the protesters. They're fucking morons.
They are.
All right, go ahead.
But I'm not going to name names because, again, but what happened was, so it's 8:00 at night. We have a room full of adults. I have my dog, Willow, the Storytime dog, and Doc, the Storytime dog. And they're playing. That Storytime was the precursor to a stand-up gig I had later that night at a comedy club. So there were no kids. They were like, well, why don't we do a video real quick? And before we got on video, no kids. I'm sitting there talking to them. I'm telling jokes. You've been to my shows. You know, I tell jokes, and I curate my language to who's watching.
Right.
And anyway, so somebody was like, read one of the books. Well, I happen to have a book called Walter the Farting Dog, which if your kids, your grandkids, your kids will love it. Get them. It's a whole series of books. They're hysterical. So I'm telling jokes and they go live. I'm reading the book, and the offhand comment was, Walter found a big bone.
Walter was a dog.
The farting dog. Walter found a big bone, and I made the offhand comment, everybody loves a big bone. That was it. Not even thinking, like, seriously, I wasn't even thinking in terms of sex. I was talking to my dogs that I was reading to, and it goes on, and that's the I gotcha moment that they had. Well, yeah. So I'm done reading. We're sitting there. We're kind of wrapping things up, and I'm looking at the time. It is 30 minutes to where I got to go, where I've got to stand up and tell jokes again. So I said, are we still live? And I looked up, are we still live? And the way they edited it together, it was like, I told a dirty joke in front of kids, And I was like, oh no,
Please don't,
still live.
please don't post that or whatever.
And what's funny is it was so inconsequential. I didn't even remember the video. I didn't even remember it. But then so Libs of TikTok, who is a far right nutbag who edits stuff together and does I gotcha videos and pays for a lot of followers and a lot of bots. I can't prove that, so allegedly. But if you have 4 million followers and you post something and all you get is
3 comments,
300 likes and 4 comments, something's wrong. And a math teacher doesn't need to explain that. So what they did, she does not actually go looking for these. People send her the stories. So the religious protesters did their little video and they took so this is Halloween time at this point. My Halloween show was called Drag Me to Hell, like the movie, but drag queen, Drag Me to Hell, which was at a bar, 21 and up. You saw where they said that it was billed as wholesome family entertainment. No, it wasn't. It was a bar show for Halloween where I had scream queens coming. And so they put all this together and they splice it in between. Now remember, all of my drag queen story times were live because a lot of people played it for their kids. So they spliced all these videos together. Because if you watched, I was in like 5 different costumes and 5 different wigs.
Oh, I haven't even seen that video.
Okay. Well, I'm good, but I'm not that good. And it was always in different settings, in different buildings, in different places. So they spliced all this together. So what they originally tried to do was blackmail the school. I was hosting trivia downtown Huntsville. One of my bosses called me and was like, do you know who these people are? And I'm like, cause I'd never heard of the owner of Libs of TikTok. And I was like, no, I have no. And she's like, well, you need to read this. She sends me this email. It's basically a demand of, do you know you have a drag queen who is a teacher? And they were making it sound like I was teaching school in drag, which has never happened. Like, never, ever.
Right.
Like, I mean, come on.
It's not like
promoting it at school.
Me,
like, what?
Give me a fucking break on that one. Like, I would get anyway.
You'd never make it to your classroom, probably,
but
if you walked in that.
So, and I'm back and forth from the mic. Sorry. But, so I'm reading it. I'm like, I know who the protesters are going to be, because they're threatening protest and they're threatening other things. But they're like, they told her either make a comment or else. They didn't say what the or.
Wait a minute. That lib group from TikTok was threatening to they were going to protest.
Yeah, Libs of TikTok, because they have nothing to do with being liberal. They are a far right.
They were going to protest the school?
Well, the protesters who protest my show were threatening to protest my school. So my principal, the administration, everybody looks at it and basically tells them, fuck off. Just put it bluntly, because that's what pissed them off, was because they're like, he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't break any policies. He didn't break, and what he does on his time is business, which is really funny, because whenever my students ask me anything personal about my husband, anything, the first words, and your child will probably be able to tell you this. Yeah. Do you know why they call it a personal life? Because it's personal. Does it have to do with math? No. Does it have to do with school? No. Then we're not going to talk about it. And that was for 30 years. Anyway, so my principal blows them off. I blow them off. I don't even think about it. The next day, we have faculty meeting, and I'm like, okay, so the or else hasn't happened. So they sent the email again and tried to back them into making a public comment on it. So what happened is we got done with faculty meeting, and the principal pulls me aside and says, you need to check your social medias. And then, so just in Alabama, Libs of TikTok posted it first, then Alabama 1819 News, then Yellowhammer, then WVNM. Okay. So it pops up everywhere. And all of a sudden it hits Fox News, the national page, which still to this day pisses me off, because they used my picture and the headline was me. But then when you clicked on the story, they used another drag queen's story time. Like, if you're going to talk about me, put my story time out there.
At least give me the publicity.
Yeah, give me the credit. But then all of the news stations in Huntsville, a couple in Birmingham, the UK Daily Mail, like, it was everywhere. Well, now the New York Times, that came later.
But that's a great article.
The Post,
And we'll link that article.
So it goes everywhere, and on Twitter is blowing up. So here's how it works. You know how when you put your at, whoever. So what was happening is every time libs of TikToks commenters commented, they would reshare the article. So Huntsville City Schools started getting bombarded. Like there were millions of people who were just outraged, and all of these different news organizations. So that was a Wednesday. That was a Wednesday afternoon. Thursday, I had a doctor's appointment. I didn't go to school. Students didn't care. Students were like, whatever. But that Friday.
Well, and I would go so far as to say that nobody cared except hyper right-wing people.
The only people who cared have no idea who I am, could not identify me in Walmart for that matter. But so that Friday, I'm on my way to school. I get a phone call that says, go to the district office. And that's where I find out I've been suspended. Because I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't do interviews.
Did you expect that?
I did not. I did not know what was happening because some failings of our teachers union, my representative and my lawyer were nowhere to be found. But anyway, they do that, and the administration bills it as we need to take a breath, because in the meantime, what has happened is my school email is bombarded from all over the world. The superintendent, the principal, everybody is just bombarded. All of these emails.
Well, I'm going to interrupt. Remember where you're at. And just to give people an example of the kind of bullshit you had to listen to, here is a screen capture of one of those messages that was posted in one of our local news stations, a news report. And some of this is there's 2 words in here that are obviously cuss words that they blacked out. I'm going to guess. I think I can guess what the cuss words are, and I'm just going to read them as if I'm guessing those 2 cuss words. The rest of it, though, is word for word from the post. This is a message somebody sent directly from you. I can't tell what medium it came through, but you sick fuck secretly want to sexualize little kids because deep down inside, you're twisted and demented pedos who really, really want to fuck kids. I seriously hope that the next workplace shooting occurs at your organization and snuffs out everyone who approved of this. Maybe then our children will be safe from predators like you.
That was sent to the owners of the dog rescue.
That's insane.
And the police said that did not rise to threat level. The police and someone from the FBI said,
what do they got to say? What do you got to say to get something to a threat level?
On that one, I have no idea. But okay, so imagine that. But so I have my business. I have Drag Queen Mafia. I have my math tutoring. I have my little side company, and then I have my school email. Imagine hundreds of those just bombarding me all day, every day. They started sending them to my mom. My mom called me, and she was like, I just saw this. She was like, you need to keep your head down. And my mom was very supportive of me my whole life. But she's like, son, this is getting ugly. You just need to keep your head down. Yeah. So
she knew all about your drag queen life. And
my mom styled my first wig. Aww. So basically her immediate reaction was, you need to protect yourself. And so I find out I'm suspended with pay while they conduct an investigation. I'm like, please ask all of my students everything.
Right.
So I go home and I tell my husband. My husband is very quiet. Everybody who goes to my shows, he is the tech person up there running everything. You will never hear that man speak. You'll hear him play sounds on his soundboard that make fun of me, but you're never going to hear him speak. I had to tell him what was going on. That like about killed me. He had to tell my stepson, his son, what was going on. Things started spinning from there. So I have multiple phone numbers, and I had a Google phone number to run my production company, to run my small business, to run that part of it. I had a Google number. So that is they thought they had my house number. So my Facebook accounts start just getting flooded. The one that just grossed me out the most, and there were a lot, was this guy who signed his business name to it. Like, he owned a business. He's like, inquiring minds want to know, do you touch your children? We're really curious about this. That's exactly what he said, word for word. And in the documentary, I showed the email. But anyway, this this starts and it just gets louder and louder and louder. And my friends are calling me and they're like, do you realize that you have been the subject of conversation on right-wing talk radio for weeks? Like 6 months, they were still talking about me.
And I'm going to guess that none of those right-wing talk show people ever reached out to you.
And in fact, there's one 18.
And that's, you know what that is? You may not consider this. I have no idea, but we can. That's because they're all intellectual fucking cowards.
Oh, no.
And I wish they would reach out to
me. Concerned about the truth. They just want.
Well,
that's what I mean.
They need clicking.
Yeah, they're intellectual cowards. They don't care. They think they're right, but they don't have the courage to hear the other side from the other person. They craft their narrative and they're fucking morons. And I hate it.
Suspended for 6 months.
So I was suspended originally for a week, and things that people don't know about because this never made it out there. I specifically asked why I was being suspended. Nobody could tell me. I was told it was to protect the students and the safety of the school, which I 100% agree with, because you don't know what one of these people is capable of.
Right.
Because you heard what they wanted to happen.
Yeah.
So I asked.
Right. Because from the school's perspective, had they done nothing and then something bad had have happened, they could have been sued.
Well, that's one of the reasons that a lot of people weren't you angry about the suspension? No, I honestly, for the safety of my students, I gladly step back. So originally it was supposed to be for a week, and then something else happened and it ended up being 2 weeks, but it was 2 weeks with pay. Now in the interim, we had just come off COVID. So I asked and the superintendent agreed. And if anybody says anything contrary, I will pull emails and I will bring receipts. I asked, can I keep teaching virtually? I will not step back on campus because that was the condition. I could not go to games or be on campus like if a kid was suspended.
Right.
I was like, but I don't want my students to fall behind. There's not a qualified substitute that's going to sit in there, and I can still keep the pace. And so I taught for those 2 weeks. I taught there was a substitute who sat in the classroom. The kids opened up their Chromebooks, put their headphones in, and I taught from my home for 2 weeks. I didn't let them get behind. So all of this is happening, and people are talking to me from everywhere. There was a lawyer in Southern California. He taught at UCLA, and he was retired. He called me, and he coached me through a bunch of stuff. He's like, shut your social media down. Print everything. Make sure you have receipts. Anytime you talk to anybody, recap it, send it back in an email. Make sure you CC a private email address that they can't get to. Okay. So I did all of that. I started getting the phone calls on my business line. They were horrid. These same people were calling the school and screaming at the secretaries. And if the secretary was like, well, I can't talk to you about this. Thank you. Goodbye. They would call other extensions and just start screaming, like the librarian, the ladies in the lunchroom, all of these things.
Isn't it incredible how violent people's emotions can get over what somebody does in their private life?
Well, the thing I have still never gotten, and this is the Jesus' love crowd that is doing this. This is the religious right that is doing this.
And the one thing you don't feel from that crowd is love.
But so in the interim, stuff starts arriving at my house. Lots of religious tracts.
Religious what?
Tracts. Those little I got a subscription to Doomsday magazine, and every single thing was about how the gays are ruining the world, and in multiple places they use the word faggot. And this is the magazine. In
a church tract, they use the word faggot?
Magazine. This is a religious magazine that was coming to my house about how the faggots will destroy America. That is 100%. I'm not going to edit it.
Yeah.
They didn't do me the decency. I'm not doing them. So I start getting this stuff to my house, which means they've got my address. Yeah. And I found out later from somebody else, through somebody who's in law enforcement, they wanted you to know they had your address, but they didn't want to go out and put it on the internet for everybody because that's illegal.
Right.
But they let me know they had it.
Yeah. Which is super scary.
Was that? Yeah. I was supposed to say, was that? I know in some sense it had to be scary, but was it? How bad was that emotionally on you?
So I have I was never a let me carry a gun person. I had guns. Don't get me wrong. I've had them. I did not leave the house unless I was armed. And that meant anywhere. And not to give away secrets, but there is nowhere in my truck that I could not grab something. One of the drag queens from Dothan, who was very politically active, she took down Roy Moore. She's the drag queen who he came out against and she stomped him. But she called me and said, don't take your own car to gigs. Don't ever leave. She's like, any bag you carry. She showed me how to fill a pipe with cement and put it in the bag, the bottom of the bag. So I had a weapon. I was like, this is overreaction. They had my address. We had a security system. No big deal. Where it got scary is my routine. My morning routine is I live out in the country. There's a gas station. I stop. I get my breakfast. I get to the road that turns to where my school is. I get 2 cups of ice because we weren't allowed to go get ice out of the cafeteria. So I went and got 2 cups of ice that I could put in my fridge at school and have ice all day because I talk a lot. So people who followed me down the parkway and pulled in behind me got out of their car and were telling me about my life and how I was an awful person. There were a lot of people who came up and said, I saw what happened. That's bullshit. You're a good person. They're trying. And a lot of people were like, just stay strong. Yeah. So I did, sort of. And in the meantime, my mom is an integral part of this whole story. I go back to school. It is now November. I have talked to Jason. I've talked to our son. We've decided I'm not retiring. I had no intentions of quitting if they were going to. Yeah.
You were eligible to retire at that point?
Oh, yeah. I taught for 30 years. That was my 30th year, technically. Okay. But I was not leaving. But when I got back to school, the energy had shifted. There was a bunch of, they had to redo the filters on my email. So I stopped getting this. Every single thing I had ever said on social media was being brought up.
And I'm sure twisted
their favorite one. And again, several of the right wing news sites. One guy wrote 13 articles about me, went on 9 talk shows and talked about me. Couldn't tell me from Adam, but had all this stuff to say. Jokes that I had forgotten I had told that people had filmed and sent to me and I posted on social media, as far back as MySpace.
Oh, wow.
Because there were some clips and it had to have been from there because they were from early 2004, 2005. I didn't even look the same, but they had gone through everything. They come through everything, every single thing I'd ever done. So what they did is that didn't work. I was back at school. The politicians that I had offended were really upset about that because this actually started before the Libs of TikTok video. There was a mailer sent by a school board member that had ended up in my mailbox, even though I'm not even her district. And it was talking trash about another school board candidate. And I took a picture of it and I made some really not nice political jokes about it. And I may have used the words Fox News Barbie. But and you can picture exactly what she looks like. I don't even have to try. But so it all keeps going and it just doesn't stop. And in November, my mom called me and she said, so I'm back. The school board, the way they justified my suspension was not to keep the kids safe or take a pause or a breath. It was I had violated the social media policy by being unprofessional on social media. And according to the letter that they gave me, I needed to make sure all my social media was private.
Was
private, okay. Which I had already done because the amount of trash I was getting. Yeah. But so the harassment keeps coming. I had made the decision I was going to stay at least till the end of the year. I could retire if I wanted to. My mom called and something my mom never does was I want all of you together for a holiday. All of my brothers and all of us together. And so something's going off. So she calls, she tells me that this is simmering. So I get home and I'm like, okay, I called her. I was like, well, okay, what's going on? She's like, it's not a big deal, but I want to talk to all of you at once. I'm like, I'm going to find out. I'm either going to find out from one of my brothers or you're going to tell me. And she told me she was diagnosed with cancer.
And this was in the middle of all of this.
This is in the middle of all of this. So I found out she has cancer, and I'm talking to Jason, like, I don't know what to do. I didn't have PTO. It's not like I could just stop and go back and forth between here and Texas. When we found out it was worse, and the doctor gave us optimistically 18 months. In his words, worst case scenario, a year. So we could stretch it out with treatments.
Yeah.
In the meantime, the wonderful American healthcare system argued about paying for everything. So, and anybody who wants to come for me, come for me. Because
I think everybody in America knows that.
I'm not the person on this one. So this happens, and I talked to Jason, I talked to Ethan. I'm like, there is no way I am not going to spend the next year with my mom.
Yeah.
So in November, I talked to my principal, and like I am right now, I was almost in tears. And I said, I have to leave. I cannot. I can't do this. So one of my students overheard this. They were just beside themselves. And I had to explain to all of my students, in a world where I don't talk about my personal life, I had to explain, I'm not quitting because I'm afraid of anybody. I'm not quitting because anybody's making me. Right. But I was harassed to the point of stopping was the most logical thing to do.
Right.
So I went ahead and I put in my retirement for the end of December. Sorry, I'm going to lose my voice. By the 3rd of February, they had put her on. Like there was no going back. They were going to she kept getting jaundiced, and apparently a bile duct from her liver something was clogged. Yeah. So they went in to try to open it up, but the cancer had already taken her liver.
So it escalated way quicker than anticipated.
Yeah, not even a month. And
they gave you a worst case a year, and it ended up being a month.
Yeah, because what I was going to do, I had pulled enough money out of retirement. My mom wanted to go on a cruise. She'd never been on a cruise. So like, fuck, we're going on a cruise. Wherever you want to go to the Mediterranean, we're going there. You want icebergs, we're getting icebergs. But then this happens, and I am still under a magnifying glass. Everything I do, like everything is set to private. Everything's set to private. I posted some stuff just for friends saying, look, I'm struggling right now. I'm not going to be around. The cult members that protested me, it was up on their site. They took that video and put it out there. I had made comments about
like it was a victory for them.
Yeah. I had made comment about my sister dying, and they took that video and on their little podcast started talking about how she was in hell and that she was being tortured, like horrible shit.
It's amazing how people who don't like you or don't agree with you how closely they watch you experience, not to this degree, but it's like, if you don't like what I'm doing or what I stand for or what I believe, look the other way. Mind your own business. It's very easy.
Yeah, but that was just the thing. It got sad. I'm like, everything I do. And then the random things start showing up at the house again. The magazines, and
I'm going to butcher this quote. I can't even remember who said it, but it was something to the effect of good people can do good things and bad people can do bad things. But for good people to do bad things requires religion. And I don't know anybody that sent you shit, but I'm willing to bet that a huge percentage, closing in on 100% of them, would claim they're Christians. Yeah. And if you're a Christian, you're taking joy in the defeat and misery of another person's
death of your mother or your sister.
Yeah. Not only are you not a Christian, but you're an absolute, and I don't care how well you treat the people you like and your children and your family, but if you're doing that to people you don't know, you are an absolute piece of shit of a human being.
But so all of this happens, and my mom passes. And I just I shut down for a while. Way down. Yeah. Like it was, anyway, that all happened. And then I'm at home. I already have my side businesses, so I'm working on those and I'm keeping those up to date. And a documentary director calls me. Well, they messaged me on Facebook first. And they're like, I work for this. They worked for a news organization at this point, and they're like, I want to talk to you. Do you have time? Now I had retired, so I could actually say what I wanted to say. Yeah. And I finally got to a point where I was like, screw it. I'm going to open everything back up. You want to come for me, come for me. But at the same time, I had to be very careful about what I posted. I didn't talk about my mom's death. I didn't talk about anything because I didn't want it to end up as fodder for somebody with a big sign that says God hates fatties.
Yeah.
So this goes on, and then that's where the Unveiling Majesty thing comes from. She asked me if she could do a story about everything that happened. Because there's a lot that we just glossed over. Her name's Megan Plotkin. She's the director of Unveiling Majesty.
That's the name of the documentary.
The documentary is called Unveiling Majesty, and it will be done soon. I'm assuming the fall. But she was like, I want to tell the whole story from start to finish. So at this point, I didn't care if anybody had something nice to say. So this is about the same time they started passing the anti-trans laws. And so I slung up and went and spoke at protests. I went and I talked to politicians. I went and I advocated for students. And I was like, yes, I'm that drag queen. Now, if you have something you would like to ask me, please, by all means, go ahead. But stop talking like you know anything. And it's really freeing when you don't have to worry about your paycheck being revoked.
Well, there's something about going through something like this and then also losing somebody that you love so dear that shifts your perspective to, I now have zero fucks to give. Like, I'm now going to lean into this and be who I am and speak for others who don't have a voice. And that's exactly what you've done.
And we talked about this when you first got here. We experienced some similar effects, nowhere near the intensity level, although they were bad, but not to the extent you went through it. But it is incredibly freeing. I don't wish this type of exposure on anybody, but it is freeing when all of your secrets are out, because then people lose that leverage over you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know, if somebody,
that's what they want. They want to shut you down and silence your voice.
And what's funny is I knew about y'all and I didn't even know you. I didn't even know I knew you. Like I knew you because you're a parent of a student, but I didn't even know, like, and it's so funny because I'm like, the whole time I'm here, I was like, what does that got to do with y'all?
Right.
Like, okay, it's good for gossip, but what does it got to do with you?
Right.
And that's one of the things I've never understood, this need for people to, I don't even know how to explain.
There's no humanity in it, right? Because the same people that were talking about me knew nothing about me.
Yeah.
But because of what we do, I can't be a good mother.
Oh yeah.
I can't be a good person.
they think.
Right. Well, that's what they think. And just like you, because of people that don't know you can say horrible things. They assume that you can't be a good husband. You can't be a good teacher. You can't be a good person. And it's like, it just removes all humanity from it. And it's just a shitty way to live your life, talking about other people.
You know, and all of this got started, at least primarily, because you made an offhanded joke about everybody likes a big bone or something like that.
Dogs.
But, well, and there probably were kids that were listening to that. And at first glance, you can understand how somebody would go, well, I don't know that I want my kids to hear a comment like that. However, go to any Disney fucking movie and they're going to be filled with innuendos. Yeah, go to Disney movie or other children's movies.
We're not at Rule 42.
This is a very common thing, even in kids' movies, because they're little jokes in there for the adults because they know they're going to go over the kids' heads. Case in point, in Toy Story, which we all love, right? I took my kids to Toy Story. Buzz Lightyear meets, I think her name is Jessie, the female cowboy character in there. Yeah. And she does some things he's obviously falling in love with her. And like, she does this little jump thing to open a doorknob. And in the movie, it's obvious he's falling in love with her and he sees her do that. And because he's a toy and he doesn't have a penis, his wings all of a sudden pop out to the side. And it's obvious in the movie what that's an innuendo for. Right. Now, that's funny to adults. But it goes right over a kid's head.
And if it
But that's
doesn't go
exact-
over a kid's head, you should be.
But that's exactly what you did, was make a joke that was going to go over kids' heads. And nobody's well, I'm sure somebody's protesting Disney, but get a life. If you think that that's a problem, if you think that somebody heard the joke about everybody likes a big bone and it's such a problem that your kid is going to be affected by it, have a conversation with your kid. Any good parent can mitigate that.
It's the purity culture. It's the preaching abstinence. Is they're ashamed of their own sexuality, so they're not talking to their kids about sexuality or anything really. And it's the Westboro Baptist type religion are the same protesters that we in that same vein that we have here.
Well, definitely they're going to go out, but I don't think it's just the Westboro Baptist types. The church,
those are the ones that are showing up protesting.
Well, I know, but the church I grew up in, well, first of all, and I've said this before, I was that guy.
Yeah.
When I took my kids to Buzz Lightyear, if I would have taken my kids, first of all, I would have never taken my kids to a drag queen story reading. And I'm ashamed of that.
But that's also your right.
It is my right.
You also wouldn't have written a hate mail.
Right. It's not that it wasn't my right. It's that I was the person that thought, who the fuck would ever take their kids to a drag queen story time? What kind of parent would subject their children to that? I had that mindset, so I can understand it. And I look back at that now over the growth that I've had over the past, 15 or 20 years.
I can see how wrong that was.
I can see how wrong I was. And it fills me with shame more than almost anything, not just the drag queen issue, but the way that I used to think about anybody that was different than me. I would have never admitted then, but it's all about being a fearful and a coward. And nobody that thinks that way thinks they're fearful or a coward. But that's all it is.
Here's the flip side of some of the coin. So you're not seeing drag queens on the news every night about being arrested with a computer full of child porn.
Yeah, you got to go to church to find that.
Or you're not seeing a drag queen in an inappropriate relationship with a student 20 years their junior, or you're not seeing that. And one of the things that I have said multiple times is that some of these people need to realize the call's coming from inside the house. You are so busy over here watching me, the distraction, because they needed a distraction, because all of this happened right as those midterm elections started, and they needed a distraction. It didn't work. But one of the people who wrote one of the anti-trans bills arrested for child sexual abuse. And it's coming out more and more and more. One of my favorite comedians is Reuben K, and he is a drag performer from Australia. He said one day, when I heard it, my jaw dropped. He said, drag queens pay taxes, churches pay hush money. And that changed my perspective on all of this. I'm like, I have busted my ass for years to create a character that was relatable and funny. I busted my ass for years to create a classroom where when you walked in, if you're a parent or a kid, you felt like you were respected and heard. And one of the things that I talk to parents about is no kid should hate school. And I tried to build a classroom where, because there's the same argument every time. It's the same thing parents used to tell me, and this is the teacher part of me. I tried to help my kid with math, tried to help my kid do their homework. It turned into screaming and tears. And I told this to a lot of parents, and it took me a little while to get here, but I was like, if it gets to that point, close the book. Call me, text me, email me, say, we really tried this, but we were getting to tears. I was crying, they were crying. Call, then turn it back over to me. It's my job.
Yeah.
I'm good at it. But close it so your kid doesn't hate school and doesn't resent you for sending them to school. Right. And I tried to build that respect in my classroom. And I really did. And this isn't just me just blowing smoke. I
can vouch for that.
It was in all of my paperwork. Yeah. Rule number 1, everybody gets treated with respect. I don't care who you are. Gay, straight, Christian, Buddhist, I don't care. Be nice to the people who come in my room and treat them with respect. Mm. And I tried that for so long, and it's funny, but I'm the one that was called a groomer. Mm-hmm. Right. I'm the one who was called a freak. And that people who don't know me, because you know who came to my defense? You know who came to my defense in all those comment sections on Reddit, on BVNN and Yellowhammer and 1819 News? it wasn't the parents. It was the kids, my students, and things that I had said over and over and over again, like why they call it the personal life. Like that was quoted so many times. So one of the things that that we talked about just a little bit ago is how far back they went into my social media history. Well, when I first moved from Birmingham to Morgan County, back 2003, 2004, we had the first ever, apparently, out lesbian couple that had kids at school. And I was not out to people like professionally or anything. I was out to the people who were important. But during a podcast, somebody was interviewing me about being a teacher and how I had to draw lines. I talked about the rural redneck school that I taught at, and I stand by that. Like a third of the boys who came to school late from mid-September for Christmas were out hunting, came in camo, but anyway, the attacks weren't on the parents. They weren't talking shit to the parents. They were talking it to the kids, and they were attacking the kids about it. So during a parent conference day, you know how you all came to the classroom, and I use the words covertly and strategically. I put 2 books behind me. They were storybooks. And this was before Drag Queen Storytime anything. This was just, they were LGBTQIA books for families. And I waited for them to say something. And I was like, oh, yeah, you can have these. No worries. I didn't say I'm gay. I'm married to a man. I will stand. I was just like, here. And in the back, I had typed up legal resources and parenting resources, all the resources that these people could need. So
and this was for the 2 lesbian mothers.
Yes, for the mothers.
Yeah.
And I did that because I was like, I can't just sit by and do nothing, but I can't go announce it to everybody because I would have lost my job.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't let it just fly. When people were inappropriate, I pulled them aside. I said, that's inappropriate. You need to stop. Yeah. But for the parents, I was like, and if they're not going to, here's your ammunition.
Right.
And I gave it out. Well, they used that. And they still talk about that in the state legislature, that teachers were covertly and strategically bringing gay indoctrination materials. Didn't listen to the whole story. Again.
Well, that's what it says in the articles I read.
30 seconds of a 4-hour interview, because the person who interviewed me, we talked all night long and they edited it down to like 40 minutes.
Talk about indoctrination, but states like Oklahoma are forcing the 10 Commandments to be in every classroom.
Oh, and the Bible.
And the Bible. And like, they don't see the hypocrisy.
Yeah, I mean, it's you talk about the redneck school, and then that's here in our area.
Well, I come from a redneck family. Don't get it twisted. I was born in the South. I lived most of my life in the South, but I have gone around. I've lived around.
Well, and that's what it's okay to be redneck. It's a different thing. I mean, we were talking about stereotypes. I have met people in this area that are redneck that are not homophobic.
Well, yeah, but that's what I was about to get at. I was raised that way. I wasn't like the hunter fisher, person, but I was raised. And again, this is the part I hate even admitting. I was racist. I was homophobic. There was never a person of any color other than just the whitest white in my house. As far as, I probably knew a homosexual person, but I don't know. I didn't know I knew a homosexual person.
Nobody talked.
And I was hyper conservative. Yeah, no, it always was hidden. You'd get beat up if you'd went to school when we grew up here in this area, if somebody found out you were homosexual. Not only did I grow up in that culture and think that way, but I don't know how I was supposed to escape that way of thinking until I started traveling and I started meeting people and having conversations with people that thought differently than me. And I know there's probably nobody listening to our podcast that doesn't at least share the bulk of the way we think about, people of difference. But on the off chance that there is somebody listening that's still homophobic or racist or any of those things, or let's say you are very anti-conservative politics or anti-liberal politics, don't be dogmatic and cocky about the way you think until you've spent significant amount of time having deep personal conversations with somebody who disagrees with you. If you've done all of that and you've done it multiple times and you still disagree with them, fine. But I'm willing to bet that at the very least, when you've gone through those conversations, you won't be an asshole about it anymore, because there are real people behind these stories. And if you celebrate the dismantling of somebody's life because they suffered through a difference of opinion in the way you think, it is very difficult to hear a story like that and still be able to celebrate their demise.
Yeah. So what are you doing now? Where is this? Are you still getting harassments? Are you still?
So I want to back up to something he said. Do you know where I stopped being a Southern conservative Democrat? It was when I taught in Birmingham for 10 years. And I taught in a school that backed up to the largest housing project in the city. And all of my kids, 99% free and reduced lunch, 98% poverty. I had never taught around extreme poverty.
Yeah.
But that changed how I saw it. And I had to start changing how I thought about things, like, because everybody's like, well, if you're poor, it's your fault.
Right.
No, it's not. There's a lot to it, but I had to change that. And now, so I started my own businesses. I still have a production company. I have a patient advocacy company where I try to make sure that patients of any kind of doctor get the insurance to pay what they're supposed to pay. And then I also have my different shows, and I get to travel more, and I also teach anti-bias training. And these are classes I've spoke at NASA, and I taught them about gay history and bias training and allyship and what it means to be an ally and how allyship looks, and because people hear the words anti-bias training and they automatically assume that you think everybody's a bad person. Right. That's not what that means. It means looking at things and closing gaps where I had a blind spot forever about poverty. I'd like to think I don't now, but, so I do all of that, and I get paid to speak sometimes. We did the documentary. Then it's the teaching gay history that I enjoy. I'm currently working on becoming a certified sex educator again, where I can teach about safe sex, and I can teach about communication, and I still have my counseling degree. Shooting the documentary was very cathartic. I didn't realize how many things I had forgotten, like just little things. That's
such a traumatic experience and time period. And then losing your mom on top of that, that just added to that. I'm sure there's so much that you just couldn't process in the moment.
And I'm still trying to process that, but it's better than it was. And were there some really dark points? Yes, there were. And I had wonderful people around me. I don't think there's a time you have seen me out in the community where you've not run up and hugged me and asked me if I was okay and did I need anything. Same with you, even though I pulled you up on stage and made fun of you.
Do you know almost every time I've gone to a drag show, not just the ones you were in, but almost every time I get pulled up on the stage. And every time I always say, the first thing I say is, I'm not dancing, I'm not singing. It's so many times I've been lied to. It's like, well, that's not what you're doing. And then that's exactly what they're doing. And so the first time I finally refused was it last week at the camp? And you were telling the truth, because all you were doing was try to be kind and say, hey, you guys come up here on stage and talk about Naughty Jim. And I sit over there and I hid in the corner, too afraid to come up there because I thought I was going to be dancing or singing.
I would have pulled a fast one on that one.
He would have made you sing it.
But I still have that voice. I still have my voice. And I think what they were trying to do, and if I boiled it all down, I think they were trying to snag my voice and say they were trying to make an example of me. Because I'm not the only teacher Libs of TikTok has done this to. Yeah. I am actually in a group of teachers who, in multiple states, they have done the exact same thing, where they take like the littlest thing they can make a big deal about. They rage bait it. And some teachers have lost their job. Like they weren't as invested as I was. They weren't like, I was on the downside of my career. Like, and I was still happy with what I was doing, and I was going to leave before I was miserable because I wasn't going to make my kids miserable. Right. But these teachers are young, and they were like 6, 7, 8, 10 years into theirs. They can't retire. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to take away what they're good at over a rainbow flag in a classroom. Yeah. It's like when teachers would get and this was North Alabama a lot, where a teacher would be out to dinner or something and have a margarita in front of them, and somebody would click a picture and then send it to their superintendent, and that teacher would get fired. That happened more than once. And it's that kind of thing that, like, they try to rage bait into creating a problem where there's none.
Yeah.
It's like the books they're trying to ban now. A lot of those books are not in school libraries. A lot of those books, if they are in school libraries, are in the age appropriate sections.
Right.
And it's so funny that this is where we are.
Right.
In 2025, this is where we are.
And we're making progress, but
we've taken several steps back here.
Yeah, there's progress, but it's so slow. But progress is happening. But if you're the person out there that in any way wishes or wants for other people to have different rights or less rights than you, because their lifestyle choices are different than yours, you're going to lose eventually. You're not going to lose as quickly as we'd like to see that happen.
Do support.
Well, but hold on. But I do want to finish this. I want to say that you're going to look back probably 20, 30 years from now and realize you made a mistake. And if you don't, 100 years from now, your descendants are, because there's so much history about how we were so racist against certain types of people that were different from us. And eventually, you always lose, because people are going to fight for their freedoms and their right to be autonomous and live the life they want to do. And it may not happen as quickly as we want, but it would be so much better if everybody would just support each other's private decisions and not try to get in the way of progress.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is green pastures. That sounds beautiful. But in the small steps that we can take, what are the things that allies can do? What are things that parents who have kids in schools that are more open can do? What can we do now to make that movement, to move that needle?
So on the parent front, all parents need to remember they have a voice too, and they need to be visible. Like, visibility is a huge thing, especially for the parents of the trans kid. If your kid's not trans, but you know that kid's got a right to exist, you need to be visible behind that parent, backing them up. Yeah. Allyship isn't always standing out in front. Sometimes it's standing behind. And sometimes it's not talking, it's listening. That's the one thing. There are things I cannot tell people about. I cannot tell a Black trans woman about her journey. I can't. I can listen to it, and I can keep my opinions to myself, and I can offer support. But sometimes it's just that being there and being behind the person and letting the people in power know, this isn't my child, but I'm still going to defend this child.
Yeah.
Because it comes back to every child deserves an advocate, but it might not necessarily be yours, but one day your child's going to need that advocate. One day you're going to need that advocate. Yeah. And so it pays to be there for people. And it's not transactional, but it is. It's that support system, and it's getting resources to people. Things I didn't know about, which I learned because when I gave those parents those books with those resources, I didn't know about any of those resources. And this is the early days of the internet. Google was not a very reliable thing. I had to literally get on the phone with different organizations that were LGBTQIA and ask questions and sit there and make a resource bank. So making sure people have access to those resources is a big deal, because sometimes, especially in the rural South, it seems like the people who are in power are the loudest and that they hold all the cards, but they don't. You can put people in contact with people who can help them. Because sometimes, like, for a while there, I was not strong enough to fight back by myself, but I'm lucky I had a support system to help me fight back. Yeah. So, but allyship really does look like support, standing there, speaking up, even when it's not you. Like right now, there are a lot of people out there speaking up. I'm not an immigrant who's worried about being deported, but I'm still speaking up because sooner or later, something, it's going to give. And I keep asking this question. Once you get rid of all the people, and I'm saying this to a specific group that you hate, once they get rid of all of the people they hate, once the trans people are gone, once the immigrants are gone, once the gay people are gone, who the hell you think they're going to come for next?
Right.
Like, I'm not trying to be cliched about it either. like once they get rid of those people, they will turn. Like you see it throughout history.
And it's the women. Then all you have left is white men. Then what? It's always
oh God, how boring!
Right?
I'm sorry.
No offense taken. I do want to say this before I forget. So I've got, I've got grandkids now, and last weekend we had, our third Pride in Decatur.
Yes, and I got to be part of it.
You were the grand marshal of the parade, but during the festival at Ingalls Harbor, my grandson, who is 6, I think now, he showed up, and my daughter had told me he's been secretly wearing girls' clothes, and he'd never done it in public because he was scared of what people would say, what some of his family would say, what friends would say. At 6, you just sort of instinctively have to pick up on that stuff, I suppose. And he decided to come to the festival dressed in normal boys' clothes. But when he got there, he saw other people like you dressed in women's clothing, flamboyant outfits, other boys running around dressed a little less masculine. And they also saw a truck parked out front that had a whole bunch of hand-me-down and used clothes in it. And when he got there, he got so excited because he saw that environment was different that he asked his mom, my daughter, to take him into that truck and buy him a dress. And he wore that dress the rest of the festival. And he was so happy, he was running around happy. And even today, even though I think I'm supposed to be this progressive guy, that was kind of tough for me. It wasn't an easy thing to see my grandson dressed in a dress.
Because we all have visions, especially parents.
But
you want your kids to be.
But you were a part of helping. I know that wasn't your event, but you were a part of helping make that environment safe. And I just wanted to, even though I don't even think you met my grandson, I'm not sure.
I think I did because I met your daughter.
But I just wanted to thank you for that, even though you may not have been aware that it was happening, but it meant a lot to me.
And that's why these events are so important.
That visibility
the visibility, the family-friendly events as well, because that little boy who is scared in small town Alabama, he'll get made fun of. What people will say that he felt safe to express in that environment.
And now there's no telling who he's going to be.
Right.
Like if you look at I should be a military officer because that's what I was raised to be.
Yeah.
I should have 6 to 12 kids because that's what I was raised to believe was right. And I should be diametrically opposed to who I am now.
Right.
And so there's nothing that says anything's fixed in stone. And one of the things that in this comment gets me in trouble, kids are going to express themselves. Does that mean right now? Does it mean anything? No.
Right.
But having a parent that goes, good for you, let's go get ice cream and not make a big deal of it. Because I remember like when I was younger, there's a story that is, you have to watch the documentary for this. It's the very first time I got busted lip syncing in drag. My dad caught me, and the shame that I got from it, because I don't even remember who the artist was I was imitating, but the shame I got from it because I had a bed sheet wrapped around me like wings and was playing. You don't always remember what was said or the whole context, but you always remember how you felt. Yeah. Your grandson's going to remember how he felt. And
right. And he's going to remember the people who are around him when he felt that way, whether it's negative or positive.
Yes.
Right.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I can't wait to see the documentary.
Yeah, the documentary's coming out hopefully this fall called Unveiling Majesty.
Yes. And if you go on the Unveiling Majesty website and click follow, please click follow.
We'll put a link in the show notes too.
But the more followers, it kind of gives us entry fee and scholarship into contests.
Perfect.
And I would like people to come away from this knowing that, yeah, you can take a beating and you can still be here.
Yeah.
And I'm no quieter. I am no less flamboyant, and I'm no less outspoken. And I still cuss like a sailor.
So if people are local and they want to see you perform, where can they find you?
So monthly, they can find me at the camp. If they follow the Drag Queen Mafia on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, the other shows are posted. Like, it's usually the last Saturday of the month at the camp, but it does move because of scheduling. And I'm at Maggie Myers a lot. I'm at Lips Lounge sometimes, but I'm everywhere.
We'll post all of your links in our show notes as well, so people can find you.
I know it's not true, but it seems like you do 47 shows a week.
You're busy.
In June, it really does feel like that. But I also do, like I said, the corporate stuff. Like, people can't really link into that, but people can hire me to do that. But I also do a lot of birthday parties and bachelorette parties. And like, somebody asked me to do a bus tour for them. Don't ask where they got the idea, because it wasn't from me. I want to be on a claustrophobic bus with but no, they wanted a drag queen. They wanted a drag queen host to entertain them while they were doing their little bus tour between here and Atlanta.
I like it.
Yeah. But anyway,
speaking of which, our next Naughty Gym event is a drag queen bus tour from North Alabama to Atlanta. That's odd that you've already
want to be on a trap bus with a gassy old drag queen that cusses like a sailor.
Well, we appreciate you coming to the house. We can't wait to come to the next show.
I just wanted a picture under the notch.
Yeah, we're going to get that picture. All right. Make sure to check show notes for that link to Unveiling Miss Majesty, so you can go follow that. All of the links for the shows are going to be in the show notes as well. If you're local, they're freaking amazing shows. So good. So remember to stay open-minded, keep loving, and never stop.